screen. Here's what we do. Normally you'd have your flight plan over here so you're ready to go, and then I would hit checklist, and my checklist comes out split screen. Introduction, cockpit, cabin prep. You're gonna do all the, and then to check them you just hit this cursor button right here to check. I push it and it'll check them as I do them. Engine covers 4 removed, pitot covers 3 removed, static wick cover 7, batteries connected, external power disconnect. So this would be the little power cart that I got plugged in, and then you're ready. And then you go through all your documents and whatnot. Okay, so you could go through every single one of these little line item I check, and it's just like the checklist, the full normal checklist that's in the book. And then if I go to exterior inspection, I can skip ahead, and this is doing the walk around, right? All the hot items, you check in to make sure you got pitot heat and the AOA is hot and free and all that. All right, and then cockpit preparation would be inside where you go around. And I've got my little flow that I do. You start over here, you come around, check all your switches, everything's in the right spot, your oxygen's hooked up. You can do a battery disconnect check, and your circuit breakers and all your switches, and you're just going to basically come across the whole panel. Let me see if I can turn on my lights for a second. Right, you turn on your panel, and I'll show you on the checklist, but all these switches you're going to be going across kind of in a flow. Right, let me switch this back to daytime so I don't forget. So the pre-flight inspection is complete. That's the walk around. Circuit breakers are in. Generator switches on or off if external power is to be used for start. So it depends on if you're going to use an external power or if you're doing a battery start. EMER lights armed. Emergency lights on, switch, standby flight, test. And I could show you how to do that sometime on the next flight. But it's fairly easy. All right, so we're just going to check, go through one by one. Standby, flight instruments, battery switch, EMER. You check, you go to EMER on the battery and check all your emergency items. And if you're not sure of exactly how to do the checklist, it's in the full checklist shit in the back of the book under the expanded section, telling you exactly how to do all that. All right, and we've talked about that before, I believe. Parking brake set. Dimming knobs as required. Those are all the dimming knobs up there. Reversionary is all normal. So you're kind of doing a sweep to make sure all your switches are where they're supposed to be. All ice protection switches are off. Air source selectors both. And this is, once again, coming across air source selector, and then normal. Cabin dump guard switches down. Fuel transfer. And you'll see it's all in order that it is across the panel as you're going across checking them. And you're just checking to make sure. Basically, they're all either off or normal. Normal, you can kind of consider normal meaning auto. Landing gear handle is down, 3 green. Engine instruments are up, so they're displaying normal. Fuel quantity, you check, make sure you got the fuel that you ordered. Initialization page, we've done that before. And that's when you first power up, and I might do that on Thursday. I'll show you how to do it, the initialization page. We'll do that on Thursday when I'm powering up for real and I'm outside, because I kind of have to be outside so everything boots up right and you're not getting all these warnings. Cockpit voice recorder, we do not have one. If you were 135, you'd have one. Throttles and off. And then delay, if you were not going to start up right away, you'd turn the battery off. EMER lights off. Standby switches off. Dispatch off. And then when you're ready, you turn those back on again. Right, and then here's where you're about ready to start. Parking brake is set, wheel chocks removed, cabin door is shut, passenger briefing is complete, seat belts are adjusted, and shoulder harness and rudder pedals, everything's good. Exterior lights as required, engine check. Instruments and message, you're going to check, make sure everything's good. You don't have any cast messages for a reason for you not to start the engine, so you're ready to start. Seat belts are good. Engine, like I said, check. Air condition is off. So if I had the air conditioner on because I'm on ground power, we would turn that off before starting. All right. Engine start, you're going to start. And I've talked about an engine start before where I'm hitting the starter button, what you're looking for. Obviously I'm in the hangar, we're not going to do any of that, but there's the start, and it kind of steps you through it, but you really don't have time to do this checklist while you're doing it because it happens pretty quick. So you'd use this checklist as a checklist, so you kind of do your little flows, get the engine started. You know what to look for when you hit the starter button. It's going to engage, you're going to get rotation, you pull the throttle out of cutoff, you're going to get fuel flow, oil pressure, light off, ignition, light off, and rotation of N1 before you get to 25% of N2. All the parameters that you have when you're starting, you're looking for hot starts, hung starts, all that jazz. You're just going to kind of do it real quick, and then you come back over here and check to make sure you did everything right. And then once you've got both engines running, you disconnect the external power, and then you do your generator check. It actually just says generators on, electrical system check, which is checking the generators. And then once you're done checking the generators and are both up and running, you can turn on your air conditioner. Elevator trim checking, check and set. Autopilot engage, disengage. Aileron trim check. Flight controls free and correct. Flap should set. Speed brakes check. When anti-ice stuff check if required, depending on the day, right? Avionics check and set. This is where we check, make sure we've got everything programmed like we want, because we've already done that when we initialized it, but we're going to just verify that we got everything in there that we want. All the V speeds are posted. Make sure that they did post when you went through the, and I'll step you through all that when I do the initialization on Thursday, and we'll show you all the numbers that it'll give you. Altimeters are good. Pressurization, you verify that it's set for where you're going, the field elevation where you're going. Messages, you check the cast messages over here, make sure nothing's, we're indoors, so we're getting all kinds of cast messages, but those should be blank. Shouldn't have anything up there other than pitot heat cold. The pitot static cold left and right, and standby should be cold, because we wouldn't get, that's a lineup item. Aft divider is open, so that's the little curtain. Passenger safety switch, you can turn that on if you want to bing them in the back. Exterior lights as required. The lights do their own thing pretty much, other than my taxi light or landing light. Brakes, apply and hold. Park and brake release. Brakes you're going to check as you're rolling. Nose wheel, check the steering. Flight instruments, check again. Rotor bias check, you do that as you're rolling, taxiing out. And then they're doing a second engine start. If you didn't start both, I always start both and then taxi. We don't ever do this single engine taxi, right? And then a lot of these are just notes that are in the checklist, and then you get to the ice protection as required. So you're gonna, this is the lineup items. Passenger seats are good. Flaps set for takeoff. Speed brakes are good. Retracted. Trim set 3 times. Crew briefing. You do a quick crew briefing. You know, all the standard call-outs and procedures, and let them know what we're going to do if we have an engine failure, fire, whatever, loss of directional control prior to V1. All of our abort procedures, and then if we continue and handle it in the air, what we're going to do, whether we're going to return here or what's the plan, you know, basically depending on the weather, that sort of thing. Radar as required. Step all through those. Radar as required. Go around button is pushed, and I usually do that when I'm initializing the airplane. I got all that stuff done already as a flow. Ice protection as required. Pitot static. These are the cleared for takeoff. Cleared, ready for takeoff. These are the hot items, or the lineup items. When you're at the threshold of the runway and it says cleared for takeoff, you're going to do these real quick. Ice protection as required. Pitot static on. Exterior lights as required. We get the landing light on, and engine check. Make sure you don't have any messages, no takeoff warnings or whatever. Static takeoff, throttles to takeoff thrust mode indicated green. That's where you're looking for those to turn green. And the little caret, make sure you're achieving what you've set. N1 command, green triangle bugs. All right, brakes release. Elevator control, rotate at VR. To achieve a 10-degree pitch, you pitch to that takeoff mode. And I can hit the takeoff button just to show you what it is. It's 10 degrees up, right? So it gets you in a nice climb attitude. And then rolling takeoff, you're going to add 500 feet. It adds 500 feet to your takeoff distance if you're going to do a rolling takeoff instead of a static takeoff. If I've got plenty of runway, I do a rolling takeoff, and it's in the box, and I'll show you that on Thursday. Brakes release, throttles to take off within 500 feet, thrust mode, indicator takeoff. This is the rolling takeoff. Green triangle, elevator control, rotated VR, and then after takeoff, all these things are, this is a, like I said, a checklist, not a do list. So we've got our flow. As soon as I take off, I've got my little flow, and I roll through everything, and then we'd come back to this and verify that we did everything, that the landing gear is up, the flaps are up, and we've got V2 plus 10. That's what the V2 10 means. It's actually V2 plus 10 knots is what it's saying. Throttles in the climb detent, yaw damp as desired, so we usually get that right away. Autopilot when you're ready for it. Ice protection as needed, as required. Passenger safety switch, you could turn that off if it's not too bumpy or whatever. You're ready to let them know that it's safe to take off their shoulder harness if they want to, or whatever, their shoulder belt. Exterior lights as required. Pressurization, you're verifying that it is, the cabin's climbing and the airplane's pressurizing. Altimeter's check, that's up to 18. And then your cruise check, you're going to go to the cruise detent or as desired. Ice protection as required. Do not, and it's got the regular, all the different little warnings. Don't do the boots below minus 35. Descent check, and you've got all these. I'm going to show you guys. We've got the descent check. We've got a shutdown check. Turbulent penetration tells you basically if you don't remember to slow to 180 knots. Don't chase your airspeed. You can do it in roll or pitch mode, so the autopilot's not fighting it too much. Expandeds. Oh, I didn't know this was in here. This is interesting. So here's the emergency checklist. Huh, that's very interesting. I'm glad I found that. Emergency switch, this is where you put it in EMER switch, and you're verifying all these items you have on the emergency bus and they're working, right? So you just go through and make sure they're all working. All right, so that's cool. Starting engines. Here's how you do the generator check. If you didn't know how to do it, it steps you through line by line. You know how you turn off the generator, you verify that amps is not putting out zero amps, and then the right generator should increase, left generator off, amber, blah blah blah. You go through and then you check the other side, and then you're good, right? And then battery back on, or you turn the battery off. Battery volts, you verify you still got 24 volts, because now you're reading battery voltage instead of generator voltage. And then the battery switch back on. This would be a good test if you didn't hook up the battery and you did a cart start and now you're just running off the generators. You don't have a battery hooked up, and that would tell you, this check right here verifies that you do have the battery hooked up and you got a good battery, right? So in the event of emergency, like a dual alternator or dual generator failure, you've got a battery. So that would be a good way to catch that if you didn't. Battery off, verify 24, battery's back on, you're back to 28 to 29 volts. And then here's all the, how you do the trim check, autopilot check. And I do this as a flow. You just kind of roll through it real fast because you've done, you know, once you've done it once, it makes a lot of sense. Flaps check and set. Here's how you do the flaps check. You basically go down to ground flaps. They move real fast. Your speed brakes pop up. You should get a greater than 35 annunciator on the panel, and then you put them back up to your normal takeoff, right, setting, and verify that your speed's reposted. Taxi check, the rudder biased. You got to increase the throttle to approximately 70% N1. You got to crank it up. It's way up. It's past that little white mark. It's 70% or so before you'll feel the rudder bias. So basically, if you have both engines at idle, you run one of them up to 70%, and what it does is, the way the rudder bias works is it's pressure differential between the bleed air off the two different engines. So one's got more bleed air than the other one. The right engine wouldn't have much, so it would assume that the right engine has failed. So it's going to push left rudder to help you. It's a rudder bias, and you'll feel when you push the power up to 70%, you'll feel that left pedal kick. and then you pull it back to idle, you wait for it to fall off, and then you do the other side. It's a fairly quick little test, and you just gotta, you try to do it kind of smoothly but quickly so you don't get all squirrely, you know, down the taxiway. All right, and then second engine ops, how to check stuff if you crank the second engine, and then whatever. What else we got? Oh, ice protection. It tells you how to check that if you were going to be taking off in icing right away, how to check your anti-ice. You'd turn on the heats and everything and verify that the engine heat is actually heating the wings and all that. Your cold messages would go out and all that, right? And bleed air is all good for the windshield. So that's it, and then that's it. All right, that's it. Go back to full.